Well, renowned plant scientist Sue Rhee joins me on MSU today. Sue is bringing her expertise to Michigan State University as the director of its Plant Resilience Institute and as an MSU Foundation Professor in the departments of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, Plant Biology, and Plant, Soil, and Microbial Sciences. Sue, great to welcome you to the show and to the university.
Thank you so much, Russ. It's great to be here.
Is there any past experience with either MSU or the state of Michigan?
Actually, I have an interesting story about my relationship with Michigan. You could say that my family's roots in the US got started in Michigan. So I have an uncle who was studying law in Korea, in South Korea, in the 50s, and he decided to pursue an education in the US. And so he came to US in 1955, and he got graduate degrees at University of Michigan. And he met the love of his life, and he got married there and had two kids. And so my two cousins were born and raised in Ann Arbor, and my uncle had six other siblings. And so they, over the course of the next decades, he actually brought everyone in his family to the US. And my family, my parents, myself, and my sister were one of the last ones to come to the US in the 80s. So interestingly enough, that uncle, his wife, and my two cousins actually all now live back in Ann Arbor. So I have some family ties in Michigan.
How about that? Well, you'll only be an hour away from them now. So, and Sue, give us a little bit of your background before coming to MSU and kind of describe what your research interests are.
hmm Yeah. Well, I got my undergrad degree at a small liberal arts college at Swarthmore College outside of Philadelphia. And then I went to the West Coast to study plant biology at Stanford. And I did my PhD thesis work at Carnegie Institution for Science, which is located on Stanford University, in a lab of Chris Somerville's, who actually, this is another of MSU connection. Chris Somerville and his partner, Shauna Somerville, were faculty at MSU for a long time at the PRL, actually, Plant Research Laboratory. And so when Chris moved to Carnegie from MSU when I started my PhD there. So anyway, I studied plant biology at Carnegie / Stanford, where I studied how pollen develops. And then I just stayed in California, mainly on Stanford campus. I switched to bioinformatics, which is really combining biology with computer science research. And then got a assistant faculty position back at Carnegie in 1999, and I've been there since and moved up the ranks. And I'll be retiring from Carnegie next summer and starting a position at MSU.
And when did you first become interested in plant science broadly, and why are you passionate about this work?
Well, I kind of got into plant science a little bit serendipitously. As I told you, I went to a very small college, Swarthmore College, and there, the biology department had only about, I think, 10 faculty, and hands-on research was not very widely available. But one of the biggest labs that had students doing research was a plant lab, headed by a faculty named Mark Jacobs. Who used to work on auxin transport. Auxin is a plant hormone. And so I sort of got into doing research in Mark's lab, which was really exciting. It was a Howard Hughes undergrad lab where there were more than 10, maybe almost 20 undergrad students doing independent research. And I would say we were operating almost like grad students. And so it was really exciting. It was a big lab. And I really got sort of passionate about doing experiments myself and, kind of understanding things on my own terms and things like that.
And so what attracted you to MSU at this time?
So MSU, as you know, is one of the best places to do plant research. And I have a lot of colleagues, a lot of friends, um, a lot of people that I respect for what they do, especially in the areas of plant metabolism. I would say MSU is probably one of the best places, if not the best. And so definitely the people there, its reputation. And then when I interviewed there, I was really impressed with how the search committee, for example, that I interviewed with had graduate student, had a postdoc, and an assistant faculty on the search committee. Whereas, some of the other institutes I was looking at, I was talking to a very high level administrators and chairs of departments and so on. And so immediately I kind of felt like the culture is really what I like. And I had a great time with the interviews. And I was really impressed with the early career scientists there, the assistant professors, the trainees, the postdocs and grad students. There's a sense of excitement, passion, and interaction, which was all super cool.
That's
So
that's
it's the
very
people.
Yeah, that's very cool to hear, Sue. And I'm sure if you haven't noticed yet, you'll find a very low barrier to collaboration at MSU as well. So, um, what do you think? I guess you probably go to conferences, Sue, that address this, but sort of what are some of the key issues and challenges in plant science today? I imagine one is how do we double food production to feed the world's growing population, which we just saw the other day has hit 8 billion.
Yeah, I mean, we face so many problems today, right? It's not just food security, but also environmental, degradation, sustainability in the way we grow food and, distribute food, energy, there's climate change, so much going on, you know, that I think we have to deal with, and more sadly the next generations of folks would have to deal with. And so in all of these major issues today, I think understanding how plants work it is a really important aspect of trying to come up with innovative solutions. And not just like growing food better, but also I think we can think of plants as potential factories for sourcing materials, chemicals. I really do think that we are entering an era of manufacturing from biology. And it's not just plants. I think also microbes would have a big role in that. And so also, in terms of thinking about the environment and conservation, how people also talk about us being in the sixth extinction of species, right? And we don't really understand how how this is happening really, and where things can sort of be mitigated. And so I think that having a better understanding of plants is going to really help in so many ways, because plants actually are the biggest parts of our environment, of our ecosystems. So yeah, I think understanding plants is great, but then since the last, I don't know, since the 50s, I would say plant science sort of has kind of gotten less and less prominent, relative to medical sciences. And so, there are now very few places where, there is huge sort of, research in plant science that goes on. I think MSU is a great example of that. But most R1 schools, I would have to say, plant science is sort of fairly small. And so, I think that, yeah, there's huge opportunities in plant science.
That's great. And Sue, talk more about the mission of the Plant Resilience Institute that you'll lead.
So the Plant Resilience Institute's mission is to sort of be a premier institute for conducting outstanding plant science research, especially in how plants can be resilient against adverse environmental conditions. And here we're trying to study plant resilience from many, many angles, all the way from ecosystem level to down to single molecule molecular level. And so, currently it's about 11 faculty involved in, asking really interesting questions about how plants become resilient.
And Sue, tell me about the Arabidopsis information resource.
Oh, the Arabidopsis information resource, it's also called TARE. It's a online resource of information and data that has to do with this model plant called Arabidopsis thaliana, which is a plant that became a model organism around the 1980s. And again, Chris Somerville had a big role in creating this community around Arabidopsis, studying Arabidopsis. And I think it was about 1999 when genome sequencing was becoming a thing. There was a huge movement to sequence a plant genome, and Arabidopsis was chosen to be the first example. And when the genome was about to be done, there was a sort of a community effort to try to create a database infrastructure to house that genome sequence information, along with all of the other information that was known. And so I got involved in creating that infrastructure, and it became one of the most popular databases that are used for research today. I would say it's probably the best used plant resource out there still, like 20 years after its inception.
Sue, I wonder if you might just comment on the value of basic scientific research that happens at places like universities. Sometimes in our fast-paced culture, people want a cure for something 9 months after research begins, but things like the iPhone sprung out of things maybe started 50 years ago for different reasons. Just when people and taxpayers doubt things, what do you say about the value of basic scientific research?
Yeah, that is a really great question. I think basic science is really what's going to be driving the future, economy. All, as you say, a lot of the inventions and technologies that we really benefit from today have come from basic science. And basic science in plant biology, for example, was responsible for the Green Revolution that really ended up saving hundreds of millions of people, using tools like breeding. Today, plant scientists are actually using tools like plant genome engineering to sort of be able to manipulate plants even more precisely. But knowing what to engineer, right, what to manipulate, is where the basic science comes in, right? We have to understand how these organisms work and how the traits that we want to improve, what controls those traits, and scientists actually have invented really great ways of thinking about and studying these different traits and the molecular players that bring on these traits. And so I think that's where basic science can really triumph, is to really allow us to understand how things work, and then we can figure out how to invent things. Like we might be able to invent things that evolution even haven't touched on yet, right? But without really knowing how things work, we can't really I think invent.
Well said, Sue. Well, it's been great to talk with you and get to know you a little bit, but just give us some final thoughts for Spartan Nation as you prepare to bring your expertise to us.
Well, I am just really excited to come and learn One of the reasons why I'm excited about MSU is because, it is a land-grant university and there's a very thriving extension programs. And, Michigan has a lot of different types of growers, and there's a lot of interesting industry. And so, I'm very excited about not only plant science, but about food and environmental justice. And I'm excited to learn from people like Shahi Chappell and Kim Chung, who are social scientists in that space, and want to connect what they're doing, with plant science, and try to create things that really don't exist elsewhere, and have Michigan and MSU be leader in that space.
That's Sue Rhee. She's director of Michigan State University's Plant Resilience Institute and an MSU Foundation professor in the departments of biochemistry and molecular biology, plant biology, and plant, soil, and microbial sciences. And I'm Russ White. This is MSU Today.